She was only 4 years old. She couldn't read. She couldn't write. She barely knew how to tie her own shoes. But she knew one thing. She knew something was wrong. And she couldn't understand why the one man who was supposed to protect her was the one quietly breaking her. My name is Lily Rose, and what I'm about to tell you is something I kept locked inside for years, something I never thought I'd say out loud, but I'm saying it now, because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. I grew up believing that family was supposed to be the safest place in the world. That was the picture in my head. Sunday dinners, laughter in the hallways, a father who carries you on his shoulders when your legs get tired. I believed in all of it. My father, my dad, was a tall man, broad shoulders, quiet eyes, the kind of man who didn't say much, but when he did, people listened. Growing up, I thought that silence was strength. I thought it meant he was wise, deep, dependable. It took me decades to understand that silence can also be a weapon. His name was Gerald. Everyone called him Jerry. And if you met him at a neighborhood barbecue, you'd probably like him. He had this way of laughing. Slow, low, comfortable. Like nothing in the world could touch him. He gave firm handshakes. He held doors open. He remembered people's names. But at home, behind the walls of that yellow house on Clover Ridge Lane, he was someone else entirely. I was the oldest of 3 kids, my younger brother Mason and my baby sister Kara. My mom Sandra worked double shifts at the hospital most weeks. She was a nurse, tired all the time but never complained. She kept us fed, kept the lights on, kept the house running on a quiet kind of love that never needed applause. My father, on the other hand, sat. He'd sit in that recliner by the window and watch the neighborhood like it owed him something. He wasn't a lazy man in the obvious sense. He worked, he paid bills, but there was something hollow in how he moved through our lives. Like he was physically present, but emotionally somewhere else entirely. I noticed it as a child, but couldn't name it. Kids feel things long before they have the words. He didn't hit us. I want to be clear about that. There were no bruises, no marks, no reason for the neighbors to call anyone. What he did was quieter than that, more careful. He'd look at my mother like she was a burden. He'd sigh when Mason cried. He'd say things with just enough plausible deniability that if you repeated them to someone else, they'd say, "Oh, he probably didn't mean it like that." He always meant it exactly like that. When I was 17, I left for college. I didn't look back. I built something slow and steady. A degree, a career in social work, a small apartment that smelled like coffee and cedar candles. I exhaled for the first time in years. Then I met Daniel. Daniel was everything my father wasn't. Warm, expressive. The kind of man who texted good morning and actually meant it. He made me feel like being seen was normal, not something you had to earn. We got married in a small outdoor ceremony, barefoot in the grass. And when I cried during the vows, he cried too and didn't try to hide it. We had a daughter. We named her Marigold. But from the very first week, Daniel started calling her Mari, and I called her my little Goldie. And somehow she became both and neither and everything all at once. She had Daniel's dimples and my stubbornness, and the kind of belly laugh that made strangers in grocery stores stop and smile. She was 4 years old when everything changed. Daniel and I had been going through a rough patch. Nothing catastrophic, just the kind of friction that happens when 2 tired people are trying to keep a household, a toddler, and their own sanity all running at the same time. We'd had some arguments. Nothing broken, nothing cruel, just the grind of real life showing its edges. My father heard about it through my mother, and something in him saw an opportunity. I should have known. Looking back, I should have known. He started offering to take Mari on weekends. Give Watu some space, he said. Kids need their grandpa. My mother would be there too, he assured me. Mari loved going to their house. There was a big backyard, a dog named Biscuit, and my mom always made her pancakes shaped like stars. I didn't think twice. The first few visits were fine. Mari came home happy, smelling like sunscreen and syrup, talking about Biscuit and the garden. But then, slowly, things started to shift. She started getting quiet in the car on the way home. Not the tired quiet of a little kid who'd run herself ragged. Something heavier, something behind her eyes. The first thing I noticed was at bedtime. Mari had always been an easy bedtime kid. Bath, story, song, sleep. But she started asking me questions in the dark that didn't sound like they came from a 4-year-old's head. Mommy, do you love me even when you're busy? Of course, baby, always. Why? She shrugged in that small way kids do when they're holding something they don't know how to put down. I tucked it away, told myself she was just going through a phase. 4 is a big age, all that development, all that emotional stretching. I read articles, I gave her more cuddles. I thought I was handling it. But then she said something that stopped me cold. We were in the kitchen, a Saturday morning. I was making oatmeal, and she was sitting at the counter, swinging her feet. And out of nowhere, no build-up, no context, she looked at me and said, "Grandpa says you don't really want me." I set the spoon down. I turned around slowly, because I needed a second, because my chest had just dropped 3 floors. "What did you say, baby?" She said it again, calm, matter of fact, the way kids repeat things they've been told often enough that it stops feeling like news. "Grandpa says that when mommies and daddies fight, it means the mommy doesn't really want the baby anymore. He says you fight with daddy a lot." I sat down next to her. My hands were shaking. I made them stop. "That is not true. Not even a little bit. You are the most wanted person in this entire world. Do you understand me?" She looked at me with those big eyes, Daniel's dimples, my stubbornness, and she nodded. But there was something there, a hesitation, a tiny crack of uncertainty that had been placed there by someone who knew exactly where to press. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark running through every possible version of events. Maybe she'd misunderstood. Maybe she'd mixed up a conversation. Maybe my father had said something clumsy and innocent, and her 4-year-old brain had reassembled it wrong. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But I also knew my father. I called my mother the next morning. She got quiet on the phone, the kind of quiet that tells you more than words do. She said she hadn't heard him say anything like that. She said she was sure it was a misunderstanding. She said Jerry loved Mari to pieces. She didn't sound sure about any of it. I decided to wait, watch, pay closer attention to what Mari said after visits, how she acted, what questions she asked. Over the next 3 weeks, I kept notes, not in an official way, just in my phone, little observations, timestamps. The social worker in me couldn't turn it off. Mari asked if I was going to send her away, Sunday after Grandpa visit. Mari told Daniel he was the good one. When Daniel asked what she meant, she got quiet. Mari cried during bath time, and when I asked what was wrong, she said nothing. "I'm just checking if you're still here." That last one broke something in me. She was checking if I was still there. A 4-year-old, standing in 6 inches of warm water, crying quietly and watching my face to see if I would leave. That's not a phase. That's not developmental. That's a child who has been told, in whatever soft and plausible way, that her mother's love is conditional. That it ends. I confronted my father. I drove to their house on a Tuesday, unannounced, which I never did. My mother opened the door looking surprised and a little worried. My father was in his chair by the window. I sat down across from him and I told him exactly what Mari had said, word for word. I kept my voice even, professional even. Years of social work will do that to you. You learn to have hard conversations without flinching. He didn't deny it right away. That was the first thing that confirmed everything. He paused. He looked at the window. Then he said, "Kids take things out of context." "She's 4, I said. "She doesn't know what context means." She repeated what she was told. I was just trying to explain to her why grown-ups argue sometimes. By telling her I don't want her? I never said that. "Then what did you say?" Another pause. Longer this time. I said that sometimes when mommies and daddies have problems, children feel the effects of it. And that it's important for her to know that it's not her fault. It sounded reasonable. Almost. Except I knew my father, and I knew how he used almost reasonable sentences to plant seeds he could later deny. He was good at it. He had decades of practice. I told him the visits were paused. He didn't argue. He just looked at me with those quiet eyes, and for a second, just a second, something moved in them that I couldn't name. I drove home. My hands were steady on the wheel. but by the time I pulled into the driveway, I was shaking. I didn't know yet that someone else had already been watching. Mari had been in a small, wonderful preschool called Little Lanterns for about 8 months. Her teacher was a woman named Ms. Elaine, late 30s, warm in the way that good preschool teachers always are, the kind of person who remembered every child's favorite color and never made anyone feel silly for crying. About a week after my conversation with my father, I got a message from Ms. Elaine. She asked if we could set up a time to talk, not a formal meeting, just to check in. She said it was nothing alarming, but that she'd noticed some things she wanted to share. We met on a Thursday afternoon, after the other kids had gone home. Mari was in the art corner, happy in her own world, painting something orange and enormous. Ms. Elaine sat across from me with her hands folded, and said, "I want to start by telling you that Marigold is doing beautifully. She's kind, she's curious, she's funny. But I've noticed something over the past few weeks that I felt I needed to bring to you." She'd been keeping notes too. She opened a small notebook, soft purple cover, the kind you buy at a bookstore, and she walked me through it. "It started about 6 weeks ago," she said. During free play, Mari had started asking other kids questions like, "Does your mommy want you?" At first, the other children just looked confused and went back to playing, so Miss Elaine had gently redirected, without thinking too much of it. But then it kept happening. During a class drawing activity, Draw Your Family, Mari had drawn her mom on one side of the page and herself on the other, with a large space in between. When Miss Elaine asked her about it, Mari said, "That's because Mommy might go away." Miss Elaine wrote it down, date and everything. Then during snack time, one of the other kids had asked Mari who was picking her up. Mari had said, "My daddy. Mommy is busy not wanting me. Not wanting me." 4 years old, snack time, apple slices and orange juice. Miss Elaine closed the notebook and looked at me the way good people look at you when they're about to say something important and they want to make sure you're ready. "Lily," she said. She called me by my first name, which I liked. Children don't generate language like that on their own. That's a phrase she heard from someone she trusts. I had already known, but hearing it from someone else, hearing it documented, witnessed, written in a purple notebook with dates, made it real in a different way. Like it had stopped being something happening inside my family and become something that existed in the world. I told her what I'd discovered, what Mari had said, what my father had told me when I confronted him. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "I think you're handling this exactly right, and I want you to know, if you ever need documentation, if it ever comes to that, I have everything I've observed written down. You're not alone in this." I cried in my car for 20 minutes. Not out of sadness, exactly. Out of something more complicated. The relief of being believed. The grief of it being necessary. When I got home, Daniel was already there. He'd made dinner. Mari was on his lap, demanding he read the same picture book she'd heard approximately 400 times. He looked up at me with this expression, soft, worried, because he could always read my face. I sat down at the kitchen table and I told him everything. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "We're not sending her back there. I know. And we're going to fix this. I know." He reached across the table and took my hand. Mari climbed off his lap and pushed herself between us, because 4-year-olds have a sixth sense for when their parents need them close. We started therapy, not as a last resort, as a first move. We found a child therapist named Dr. Sadie, who specialized in early childhood development and had the most reassuring voice I had ever heard in my life. Mari loved her immediately, which told me everything. Over the weeks that followed, Dr. Sadie helped us understand what had happened in language we could hold. She said that young children are entirely dependent on the adults in their lives to construct their sense of reality. They don't have the cognitive architecture yet to question what a trusted adult tells them, so when someone, anyone, in a position of love and authority, tells a child that their mother doesn't want them, that child files it away as fact, not as possibility, as fact. She said Mari was resilient. She said we'd caught it early. She said love, consistency, and time were the most powerful repair tools in existence. She was right. Mari didn't change overnight, but she changed. Steadily, the bedtime questions stopped having that edge of desperation in them. She stopped checking if I was still there. She started laughing again in that full-body way she used to, like joy had a weight and she could throw it around. One evening, about 3 months into therapy, she was sitting in my lap while I read to her. We'd finished the book, and she was just sitting there, absently playing with the sleeve of my cardigan. She looked up at me and said, "Mommy, you're not going anywhere, right?" "Not going anywhere," I said. She nodded, satisfied, like it was a confirmation of something she already knew, but wanted to say out loud. Then she slid off my lap and went to find her stuffed rabbit. I sat with that for a long time. My relationship with my father is complicated. That's the honest answer. I did not end contact immediately. I told him the visits were suspended indefinitely. I told him that what he'd done, intentional or not, and I believed it was very intentional, had caused real harm to a child who had done nothing to deserve it. I told him that if he wanted to be in Mari's life, he would need to show up differently. That would require more than a conversation. It would require years. He didn't apologize. Not really. He said he was sorry I felt that way, which is not the same thing as an apology and never will be. My mother is caught in the middle, as she has always been. I love her. I also understand now, in a way I couldn't when I was 7 or 12 or 17, that she survived my father by becoming very good at not seeing. I don't blame her for that. I grieve it. What I know now, on the other side of all of it, is this. Harm doesn't always leave marks. It doesn't always come with raised voices and slammed doors. Sometimes it comes in quiet sentences, dropped carefully into the ears of small children who trust the adults who hold them. But children are also extraordinary. They bend. They reach toward the light anyway. Give them safety. Give them truth. Give them a love that shows up every single day without condition, and they grow. Mari is 6 now. She loves lizards, hates mushrooms, and has decided she wants to be a marine biologist or a fancy baker. She hasn't decided which. She talks too much when she's excited and goes completely silent when she's thinking hard. And both of those things are entirely me. She doesn't remember most of what happened when she was 4. Kids are merciful that way. But I remember. I remember because it taught me something I carry with me always. That protecting a child means staying awake. Not just to the obvious dangers, but to the quiet ones. The sentences whispered in kitchens and cars and backyards by people who know exactly what they're doing. I should know. I was once a child who heard those sentences too. The difference is that this time, someone was watching. Someone was writing it down in a soft purple notebook. And someone showed up. If you're in something like this, if you're watching your child and feeling in your gut that something is wrong, even if you can't prove it yet, even if everyone around you tells you you're overreacting, trust yourself. Write it down. Find someone like Ms. Elaine. Find someone like Dr. Sadie. You are not overreacting. You know your child, and your child deserves someone who fights for them even when the enemy is someone who is supposed to be safe. Wherever you are watching this right now, whether it's late at night when the house is finally quiet or early morning before everyone wakes up, drop a comment and tell me where you're from and what time it is there. I love knowing who's on the other side of this screen. If someone you trusted whispered something poisonous into your child's ear, what would you do? If this story reached something in you, don't leave without subscribing to LilyCalmStories. New stories drop every week, and every single one is told for someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next one.